So this session, this one's about mastering online documents, and I would imagine quite a few of you are here because of the issue of PDFs, bane of our life at the moment in accessibility, and considering the regulations have been with us for nearly 4 years, we're still suffering with PDF problems. So I'm going to take you through some basic principles that we can apply, and hopefully you'll be able to go away today and apply some of these straight away to your documents. Okay, if you attended our back to basics session, we left you with 2 questions in that session, where one of the questions was, does this information need to go on the website? If you have answered yes, it definitely does need to go on the website, we can progress to the next section. The next question was, could the information be presented as a web page instead of a PDF? That's the question that needs the answer in order to avoid getting into PDF problems. If you could possibly publish that document or that content onto a website using HTML, the whole PDF issue goes away. So that's another thing. But if you're here because you've answered those 2 questions and you now need to think about, what am I going to do with this pesky PDF which is causing me problems, we're going to go into what you can do. So I'm going to treat you to a screen reader demo. And I don't know, some people may have heard a screen reader reading a document, some may not. So I'm going to play a little video. It's going to show you some things. I'd like you to concentrate, if you could, on when it starts, listening to the title, listening to where it says about headings. It'll talk about heading 1s. I'd like you to listen to when it gets to the image and what it's going to do when it gets to that image part, and the table. This is going to be very confusing. You might want to follow it, but if you want to close your eyes and just hear it in the screen reader reading this to you, find out how you feel about that table. Okay, so one thing is I have captioned this, so if anyone does have their captions turned on in Teams, it's going to double up. So I don't know if you just want to switch them off for this demo, because I did put them in. Okay, so I'm going to come out here. I'm going to into my screen reader demo. This is, I think it's a couple of minutes long, but just take it in and see what you think. Okay, off we go.
LHA 2022-623 draft.pdf blank blank rent and local housing allowance comparison blank graphic 2022-0623 homepage.jpg blank. In April 2020 we saw an increase in the LHA rates. All the rates for this report are listed on the back page along with a comparison with the LHA rates in 2019. Blank. Local housing allowance rates are based on rents and limited by legislation. These rents are being paid by people with the same number of bedrooms as the property where you live, or the number of rooms you and your household needs. Blank. Heading Level 1 challenging LHA rates. Blank. There is no right of appeal regarding the amount of the LHA rate, although an appeal can be made concerning the size criteria that has been applied to a claimant. Blank. Table with 5 rows and 5 columns. Row 1 column 1 comparison of living rent and local housing allowance. Row 2 region. Column 2 1 bedroom. Column 3 2 bedroom. Row 3 column 1. Column 2 living rent. Column 3 LHA. Column 4 living rent. Column 5 LHA. Row 4 column 1 south. Column 2 £421. Column 3 £792. Column 4 £547. Column 5 £997. Row 5 column 1 column 2. Column 3 east. Column 4 £402. Column 5 £522. Out of table blank. 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 Blank.
There we go. That is a screen reader reading what looked to be a very simple document. So I'm now going to come back to my presentation. And did you hear the amount of blanks in there? Did that shock you? You can write in the chat if you have experienced anything during that screen reader demo. Did you hear the headings being read out? We had 2 H1s in there, which actually is not correct. We had lots of blanks read out. We had the graphic being given a file name. And when we got to the table, well, it really did break down quite a lot. And all those blanks, those are caused by whenever we use the enter button to put some space between a heading and the next object. So possibly between paragraphs or underneath a heading. Every one of these little markers demonstrates where a blank has been used. And now I'm going to try and show you what we can do about that. But first of all, sorry, I'm going backwards. First of all, I'm going to show you the full list of the things which we really need to be paying attention to every time we start a document. So the title, that was the first thing that I wanted you to listen out for. So we're going to think about whether our documents can have a meaningful title. We need to think about those heading styles, blank spaces, what we're going to do about images and labeling them up with alternative text, and what about charts? There's that table formatting where you saw it just read the wrong information. And there are several others, but for the moment, for today only, because we've only got 30 minutes, I'm going to just take you really briefly through each of these top 5. The rest are available in our e-learning tutorials. So if you do sign up for those, you will get a whole lot more and a lot more detail about the bits we're just about to do. So I'm going to just start with the title, and this is because it's so easy and it's so quick, and it also causes a failure. If you haven't done it, you can pass everything else. If you haven't got your title, it will fail. And it's so simple and quick that I'm going to take you into Word and I'm going to show you how to do that. So I'm going to quit here and go into my document. This is the document you just heard read out. So we want to give this document a title, and I don't mean a title as in the top of the page or something on the cover. What I mean is a title which is embedded in the coding that sits behind. It's called metadata, and that is where you put it. So I'm going to show you where. I think this is my document title. I mean, that's what my document's called. So just for ease, I'm just going to do a copy of that one. Just so I've got it on my clipboard. Where you find this metadata section, where you're going to add your title, is under here at the top left, File. You click on there, and we drop down to the Info button, well, sort of label in the menu on the left, Info, we get this screen. And as you can see on that screen on the right-hand side, there is an option here for title, add a title. So I'm going to I'm going to paste in that title that I just saved. That's the title of the document. Great. How long did that take? 30 seconds. Really, it's nothing. Another little thing which I would like to add in, but this isn't an accessibility thing, is actually I think it's always good. And if you go down to that all properties, you can get even more on the list, and is to put your company, in our case, an organisation in. So you might just put in there something like Tunbridge Wells Borough Council, or whoever or whatever your organisation is. That's not necessarily an accessibility issue, but it makes your document have ownership so that people know where it comes from. But this is the key, the title. And then you can just go using the back arrow back to your document. You've done it. It's done. So I would at this stage hit save. Why not make that the very first thing you do? You open a document, you're going to start, you know what it's called, you're typing your first line, your title in. So why not just go and put that title in right at the beginning, done and dusted. How easy was that? That's just your very first one. So now I'm going to pop back to our PowerPoint, and here is the next section. I'm really whistling through this. So next thing is those heading styles. You heard them being called H1 in that document. You also heard a lot of blank spaces being read out, which is just not a very nice experience for a screen reader user. So we're going to look at how we can avoid those and get rid of them basically. So hopefully if you use Word regularly, which I think you probably do if you're on this call, you'll probably recognize this style ribbon, and this is where your headings sit. It's in the home, it's here on the home ribbon. Some people may use them regularly, but other people just actually might not even know they exist. We learned Word a long time ago, and we all just started typing, in Arial 16, bold, whatever we wanted, but actually didn't really think about using these heading styles. But they are crucial to your screen reader experience. because if everything is labelled up with the correct heading structure, and that's where you put your title in, perhaps your next subtitle would be your heading level 2, your next title would be heading level 3, so on and so on. If somebody was reading this with a screen reader, they might think, this is a 50-page document, I need to whiz through this. I can't have everything read out all the way through. They might say, I'd just like to skip headings and go through all the heading 2s till I get to the bit I want. And that's why it's so critical that we mark up our documents with the correct heading styles. So I'm going to show you now how to do that. So we're going to go back to our document again, and here we are. So let's think about this now. What we can see up here, we've got our heading 1s at the top, heading 2, heading 3. Those are already marked, and we've got normal, and that's just for perhaps a normal piece of text. We've also got one with no spacing if you just wanted to avoid a blank below that. Okay, so let's look at this first one. This is our heading 1. That's what we want to designate in our document, heading 1. So we're going to swipe that. And you see up here, we're going to apply it. Well, it looks like that's already taken on the formatting we like. We like that color, we like that size. So now we've applied it, we might think to ourselves, okay, I want to go down to this one, but I want this one to be heading 2. And I need to designate it, but at the moment it says it's normal. But I'm going to go up and say, okay, heading 2. But you can see already that that blue that we want is now being replaced by this black bold thing, which we haven't decided we like. So we're going to click it, and you can see it's all gone what we don't want. But what we do want is this nice blue that we had. Oh, sorry, I need to highlight it first. The nice blue we had. I don't want it bold, and I'm happy. I'm happy with that. That's what I wanted that heading to be, so that all the way through my document, every application of heading 2 will be taking on this blue size 14 font. But I need to make sure that this now reflects what we've got down here in the main document. So if you highlight that and you go up to your heading 2, but you right mouse click on it, you can see the very first one says update heading 2 to match selection. So basically I've said this is my selection. I want heading 2 to match that. So I'm going to go update heading 2 to match selection. And now you can see that it's changed in the heading 2 at the top. So now all my heading 2s throughout my document will carry that formatting. And that's basically how you can do formatting of headings and get them all set up. And the good thing is if you could just get them set up before you start, and perhaps even create a template, a blank with them all set up, then you'll be starting that document and just able to hit those heading structures all the way through. Okay, now those blanks which they just sound awful when it's being read out. And the reason is, and I'm going to turn this paragraph marker on so that you can see the formatting. And you can see all those places where these appear. And do you remember it read out blank, blank, blank at the beginning of that screen reader demo? And that was those 3 there. And it read out blanks in all these places as it progressed through the document. And we just want to get rid of them. So what are we going to do? Well, should we just try getting rid of that one? Okay. But now my heading doesn't look, it doesn't look right. I want space. I need space. So in order to create a bit of space below this and not get that blank appearing, if we highlight our heading and go up to this icon at the top, which you see here, and this is the line and paragraph spacing icon. It's a quick and simple way of doing it. You can click on the drop down there and you can see it says add space after paragraph. So if we click that, we've now built that space in below our heading, and that's become part of that heading. But of course it's not applied it up here in our heading 1. What we need to do is say, right, I need this with its space to be my heading 1. So we'll do what I did before, and we'll right mouse click on it and say update heading 1 to match selection. So now heading 1 will always carry the space underneath and remove that blank line, which is what we didn't want. We can go down and apply perhaps the same to our heading 2, do the same there. So again, we don't want this spaces, so we're going to take it out and see what happens. And now we're saying, no, I need that space. I need more space to spread my content out. So again, highlight it there, go up to the paragraph option here, add space after paragraph. And there we are, we've added it in. And because we want this to be replicated throughout all the document with our H2s, we're going to apply it to this style, and we're going to go right mouse click, update heading 2 to match selection. And now every H2 will automatically have that space after it, and the blank has gone, which is great. And we can also apply this to our standard paragraph, because again, in between every paragraph, we've got this space. And that's going to be read out as at blank all the way through your document. So again, even with our normal, we need to create that space. So we're going to highlight that, which is currently normal. And again, we could add the space after. You can see the space has been added in. And then I could just remove, you can see it's done it all the way down now. It's added that extra space. I'm going to remove that blank. And now you can see there is our space after each paragraph. And again, I need to apply this to our headings, and well, this is our styles ribbon. So I'm going to go to the normal, which is our normal paragraph, and I'm going to say update normal to match selection. And all the way through the document, it's even happening in before your eyes, this space has been incorporated. So we can get rid of this blank, we can get rid of this blank, any more. These ones up here, actually how to deal with these ones at the top. These have been put in to sort of shove it down a little bit, but actually, why not remove them and just use your normal header footer to start your page a bit lower, and then you won't get that blank read out at the beginning. So there's some ideas for you. There's all these ones at the end as well. Look, we could clear them. And in fact, if you were using spacing to push content down to start the next page, you don't need to do that. All you need to do is press insert page break. And you can even get rid of that little one there. It won't be read out as a blank. And that way you've pushed your content down without using those blank, because you heard at the end of that read through, it went blank. Somebody might think that document ended. They might not even realize that it was going on to more. So that is quite a quick and simple way of getting rid of all those blank spaces. I'm going to go back to the home tab. There is even more. Oh, hello.
Sorry, yep. Jane, I'm sorry to interrupt. I'm just going to ask a quick question. There's lots coming in on the chat. It's all really good feedback.
Okay.
But one before you move on, there was one from Caroline who says, does the I icon, like a capital I icon, now mean it won't be heard once it's incorporated into a header or a paragraph?
What do you mean by this?
Do you mean the little P, the paragraph, that thing? Caroline, give us something in the chat. Yes. So does that now mean that blank won't be heard?
It won't be heard, it won't be read out. It just is automatically incorporated into text. It will just run along. It'll say comparison with the LHA rates in 2019. Local housing allowance rates are based on rents. It won't read anything to designate that there's a new paragraph. So it just gets rid of the clutter, all that clutter that doesn't need to be there. So that's how that one works.
Thank you. Sorry to interrupt. Carry on.
Carry on. Okay, I'm going to go back to our presentation now. And our next part is about images and charts. When we read out that screen reader and that signboard, the To Let signboard was read out with, I think it said graphic 220623-homepage.jpg. That wasn't at all useful, was it at all useful to anybody listening to that? They didn't know what that picture was. So we need to give our pictures proper words to describe them. And here's a simple one. This is just daisies and a summer blue sky. That's just an example. But hey, we do have different ones, don't we? We have ones like this, which could be an image that's been brought into a document, and that's not something you can easily describe in words. So we're going to have a little look at what we could do about things like that. So again, we're going to go pop back into our document, and let's start by looking at this picture. So what is that picture giving to this document? The first thing you need to think is, if I don't have any description about that document, as if that image, as if it didn't exist, would the person who's listening with a screen reader and can't see that, are they going to lose anything? Is there anything important in that picture that they need to know? Is it an emotive picture that sets the scene for something within that document? And it's your decision whether you think they need to know that. If you don't, you could mark it as decorative, and that means it won't get read out. In this instance, I'm going to click on it and I'm going to see what is already in here. And if you right mouse click on the picture, you can go down to Edit Alt Text, which is editing out alternative text. And there's the wording. Now, that was what was read out by the screen reader. It said 2022-06-23 homepage.jpg. It's not helping anyone at all. But I think my decision on this would be that I might mark that as decorative, which is using this tick box at the bottom. Because to be honest, the telephone number isn't shown. The wording underneath isn't shown. It just is a to let board. But if it was important that to let board was an important part of the document, you could mark it as I want to write something in here, and you might just put to let signboard, oh, not a singboard, a signboard outside a house. I mean, what else can you say, really? You don't have to go into the detail of, with a blue sky or anything like that. So if it is needed, that's where you type it in, just there. So right mouse click, edit alt text. So that's that one. But let's start thinking about what we might do with, I've got another one down here, something like that graph. This is obviously something to do with homes, agreement to new homes. I've taken it out of somebody's document. Don't even know whose it was now. And I'm going to right mouse click on that one. And let's just see what was written in there. Right. So it starts with graph 9.1 agreement to new homes. So that's kind of like a title, but actually the title is already in the document and it's going to be read out anyway. So actually we don't even really need to repeat that there. That could actually come out totally. We don't need that line. And now it says 48% of respondents agreed that there was a need for new homes. 27 disagreed or strongly disagreed. So I think what they've done is summarize that graph by saying 48% agreed. So they've probably added these two columns together to get their 48 and these two together to get their 27. Is that really telling everybody what they need to know? It might be, depending on the context of this document. But for something like this, we've only got 5 values. I think I would rather write in something like strongly agree, what's it, 14%, do you think? It would be helpful to know what the figures were. Agree, 34%, etc. And just type the 5 values in, and then at least it's read out. Nobody is denied any information. Everything they need to know is said to them. So I think that's probably the best way of dealing with a simple sort of chart. But if you had something like this one, this is starting to get a little bit more complicated, and I don't think I'd want every value read out because that starts becoming quite onerous for the screen reader user. If they don't want to listen to that, they've got to get past it to get on to the rest. So I think what we need to do is think, how can we actually mark something up that's a little bit more complicated? So again, I think we can get rid again of that title in there. We don't need that repeated twice. And this one, they said mobile phone coverage, broadband infrastructure, green energy, sporting facilities are the key recommendations. So they've only picked the top 4 and they haven't actually talked about anything to do with these bottom ones. That means that the person who can't see this and is having this read out by a screen reader isn't going to know what these values down here are. So I think in a way, this would have been better presented as a data table. Or if you want the visual impact for the people who can see it and take in what they're seeing on the screen, who might not need the table, but just repeat the information as a table, a data table underneath, so that people can actually, people who've got a screen reader can actually have that read out to them, and a nice accessible table would do the job. So alt text is quite tricky. You've got to really think about your document and what you want that person to gain from hearing the image that's before them. Okay, I'm just checking my time, make sure I'm on time. Yeah, just a couple more. I'm going to go back to our presentation. Sorry, am I in the presentation? No, I'm in the document. Back to the presentation, and we're just going to quickly look at tables because this is the last bit. Tables with spanned, merged cells, all of this kind of thing, which gets used a lot. They really do cause problems for screen readers, and you heard that one being read out. It wasn't properly formatted, and all those cause real problems, all those span cells. We want a nice simple grid like this one here at the bottom, really nice and basic. So I'm going to show you again back in our document. We're going to go back to that table we had, this one, and we're going to think about what can we do to this to make it accessible and make it read out properly. Well, I was thinking, looking at this first row is spanning all the columns, but do you know what? That's just the title of the table, isn't it? So why not let's take it outside of the table? So what we could do is just grab our piece of text and put it outside of the table, and you could apply a heading style if you wanted to it, if it was relevant. And then we got rid of that whole row. So that's one that can go. So we've got rid of one part of the problem, but now we're sitting here with a merged sort of double span on these two. So should we think about how we can deal with that? It doesn't look so pretty, but what you could do is put that 1 bedroom part just in here, and the same on this one, 1 bedroom, and the same here for the 2 bedroom. And over here as well. I think you can probably see what I'm doing now. And now we've done that, do we need these at all? No. So we could get rid of that row. So we're going to get rid of that cell, delete that whole row, but I've got to be careful I don't delete my region, which will probably go. Yeah, so I just need to pop the word region back in there. And then again, we're looking at these. This is spanning 2 here. So what we could do is actually just put the values 792 and 792 in single cells. So we could grab that cell and we could split it into 1 column with 2 rows. That's correct, isn't it? 1 column, 2 rows. And then type the 792 in there, and the same over here. Split it into 1 column, 2 rows, and type our 997 in there. Looks like I probably need to do something to center that up. But now you can see we've got a grid. So we're nearly there. We're nearly there with this table. The last thing we've got to do is make sure that this row, this top row, it marks our column headers. So they're the headers. And that means that when the document's read out by a screen reader, when it gets to say this value, it will say 1 bedroom living rent, £402. When it gets here, it will go 1 bedroom LHA, 792. So that really helps you know where you are in the table, and it's applying the value to the header so that it makes much more sense. But in order to make those headers work, what we've got to do is designate this row as our column header row. And the way you do this is I'm going to just show you, I want you to turn it off to start with. So any cell, anywhere apart from in that header row, it doesn't matter where you are, just click any one of them. And up here, table design, it's up here at the top, click on there and untick that header row. Right, so that's gone. We've got no header rows applied. Now we go, right, this is my header row. Highlight it and tick it, just that single row. Now that has been designated as our column header row, and that should make that much more accessible and easier to read with a screen reader. That was a real whistle stop. I rushed through those top items, but we have got a whole lot more in our e-learning courses where I go into a lot more detail about tables, a lot more detail about headings, and show you quite a lot of other things that you can do. And our e-learning courses are going to be launching on the 12th of July. So if you want to find out more, do get in touch with Catherine, and the details at the bottom there. And we can also help with all sorts of other support ways to help you with your PDFs and remediating any documents that you might have that are just causing too much of an issue. So get in touch with us if you need help. But hopefully I've given you something to take away today that you could apply to any of your documents right now.
Thanks ever so much, Jane. That was brilliant. Well done. That was a jam-packed half an hour and we covered a lot, and we've had loads of really interesting chats while you've been doing that. I know you haven't been able to see it. Lots of people saying thank you for really practical, helpful advice. So really thank you very much. There are a few questions which we've sort of been answering as we've gone along, but if we haven't been able to, I just wanted to run them past you now when you've got your breath back.
Yes.
So one of them, just while we are on, well, let me start from the beginning actually. One got picked up nearer the beginning to say, what screen readers do we use, and what would you recommend to sort of test your documents by running it through a screen reader?
Well, I use NVDA, so it's NVDA. It's free, and that's the voice you heard. That's the NVDA reading that document out. There are others. There's a paid-for one called JAWS. It's a lot of money. I'm sure there are quite a few people who do use that, who need to use that regularly. For ourselves, for testing, I'd say NVDA is good. And there are other sort of read alouds. Is James on the call? Just wondering if he knows the names of Windows Narrator and other ones. Are there others that James
Windows Narrator is another good one, because that is included in the Windows package.
Yeah.
So
is there an Apple one or an iPhone one? I can't remember what it's
Yeah,
what they were called.
Apple VoiceOver.
Yeah.
And then there's a few other. There's JAWS. Obviously, yeah, NVDA is probably the most popular one.
Mm-hmm.
But obviously, yeah, they all vary in price. I think there's also one called Dolphin, I believe.
Okay. I mean, I get on with NVDA okay. It's tricky because we don't use them regularly, but if you want to just try something through, sometimes it just shows you something that you didn't expect. It opens your eyes to what it really is like hearing your document read out, and it might actually help you sort of think how you're going to present your information a little bit differently if you can hear it as you're designing your document.
Excellent. There's a lot more questions coming flooding in, so we'll see how many we can go through. There was one a little bit earlier on about when when you were writing out your sort of fairly simple chart and you were putting the information in the alt text, should you put commas between everything? How does a screen reader read out the alt text? Will it read like 29% small house, comma?
It doesn't really say comma and full stop or anything. It almost doesn't really kind of breathe as such. So you don't have to put capitals in. You don't have to worry about all that kind of stuff. You don't have to put punctuation in. But just imagine that it's flowing. It doesn't really have sort of breathe spaces. I guess if you put a return in, like I was doing, I put a return, didn't I, between each set of percentages. I don't know if the screen reader recognizes that as changing the emphasis on the way it speaks, but you don't have to worry about sort of line spacing, punctuation. Just write it as it flows in a conversational way.
Thank you. And on the subject of images and alt text and things, there was a bit of chat about what to do about maps, which I think James answered there, that they are exempt. But that you should put some description of what the map is trying to show. I don't know if you've got anything to add to that.
Not really. Maps are tricky because maps are all about looking at a map. It's visual. So if there's some really important information in that map that someone needs to know, then you need to say it as well, possibly in the context. So if you've already explained what's in the map in writing, you don't have to worry quite so much about whether that map describes it all. A bit like those charts. If every one of those bits of information had been said in words in the surrounding paragraphs, you could get away with being a little briefer on the alt text. But you just have to think, if I don't tell the person what's on this map, is this going to mean their experience? Then they're just not going to learn what they need to know. We don't want to deny anyone the user experience. So anything you can do to describe a map that's effective, but if it's not, then they are exempt, basically. But I like to look at it from the person's point of view. Can they actually get what they need from this document? Are they getting what they need to make whatever decision they're there for? Yeah.
Excellent, thank you. And then on the topic of headings, we've had a couple. So there was one question from Anne-Marie, where is it better to use H1 heading over title? Yeah. And then another question about when you would use heading 2, heading 3.
Right. I've seen quite a lot of documents where things like document title is used in the heading styles, but actually the PDF, when you save it as a PDF, Acrobat sees H1, H2, those heading 1, heading 2, heading 3 are the ones it's looking for. If you use document title, it'll just think that's normal. It won't treat that as a heading, so it won't get read out in the heading order. It won't be something that someone can jump through using a screen reader if they wanted to jump from heading to heading. So if you've got a title, it needs to be heading 1. If you've got a subtitle, it needs to be heading 2, 3, 4. And we do have 6 already sort of set up in Word when you first start with Word. So those 6 really, you shouldn't need more than 6. If you need more than 6, your document must be really complicated.
Mm-hmm. So the H2 is like a subtitle, isn't it? And then if you had more sections under that H2, you would then use H3 because that would be another subtitle. So that's how the heading structure.
And I know it
down.
feels wrong when, say, you've got a title and that's heading 1 and you put it on your cover, and then your first page says contents as a title, and then you have to make it H2. It feels a bit uncomfortable, but it is H2 because you've already used H1. You can only use it once, so it forms H2. And everything that comes under H2 in the sort of hierarchy is H3, and you can't skip them going downwards. But obviously, if you put an H2 in with an H3 underneath and an H4 under that, and then you wanted to go back, you can go back to H2 and start again. But you can't jump around. You have to only go downwards, if you know what I mean, in order. You can't skip from H2 to H4 because it will throw up an error. Yeah,
and that's because it's creating the structure of your document. So if someone just was to pull up all those headings, they would see the heading 2 with the number of heading 3s underneath and things like that.
And they're in the proper structure order of the document. So it's really worth kind of learning about your document that you're creating as you do it, and sort of plan that out and think, right, okay, this is where I want my headings to sit, and this is the hierarchy. Imagine that they were just the table of contents, all those headings. Would it make sense as a sort of index? And that should help you sort of structure them a bit better.
Yeah. Excellent, thank you. We've had one question here, and I think I know what you're going to say about this, the dreaded footnotes and endnotes. Have you got any advice about them? Are they accessible? Is one better than the other, or should we just be encouraging people to avoid them?
Well, I don't like them. They're a pain. What happens with footnotes, if you can imagine a screen reader reading them, they're going to get to a footnote. They're going to go like, 1, little baby 1, link. The person's going to go, oh yes, I'd like to read that, and they're going to go enter. It's going to go down to the bottom of the page, read that footnote, and then it's got to go back to where it was, which is bad enough doing that visually, let alone having a screen reader do it. It might work for number 1, but if you've got 2 or 3 on that page, it's got to jump up and down, and they don't translate from Word directly over to PDF in a really well accessible way. Sometimes they sort of work better than others. It really depends maybe what version of Word you're using, or they always need to be remediating in the PDF, and that is a painful operation, I can tell you. So anything that you can do to avoid using them, if you can put the piece of information into the wording in context, that's a much better way of dealing with it. Endnotes are even worse, because endnotes, if you think about it, they can't go back and forward, because you're going to that page at the end and then it wants to read them all in one go, which you don't want. You want to go each one to go back. So they almost don't work at all. They're just really, really hard work. And that's why I say if you could possibly avoid them, if you do put them in, you might have to remediate in PDF and make sure that it absolutely works perfectly in your PDF. Otherwise, you might find that they're breaking your PDF.
Excellent, thank you for that. There's a few more coming in as well. There's quite a few comments about how do you save from Word to a PDF and stop your changes disappearing and things like that? I know
yeah.
we cover that in the e-learning. Is there any quick advice you can give for that?
There's quite a lot of ways of saving a PDF from a Word document, and I found the only one that works every time without issues is to use, when you go into your file save as, just use the file save as option. Don't use any of those icons that you get, you know, Acrobat Create PDF and all those other things. Just file save as. In fact, I'll show you. Shall I just show you? Would it be easier?
That might be helpful.
Quickly
Yeah, thank
show you. I need to go to, where am I? Where's my document? Here. Right, so we go File, Save As. Don't click on this Save as Adobe PDF. You'll only have that if you've got Acrobat, actually. No one really has that if they don't have Acrobat. Just File, Save As. You click there. And then up here, we've got, at the moment, it's going to save it as a Word doc, but we're like, no, I want to, and take the drop down, Save as a PDF. So save it as a PDF. And I always click more options every time. I don't have to, but I do it every time because it's part of my flow. Options twice. So that one and this one here at the bottom. And I check that I've got my create bookmarks using headings, because that's one thing that's going to make your document even more accessible. Make sure these are ticked. Document structure tags for accessibility is ticked. So these two are really important. So I always check them, and they're nearly always check, but I still check every time. And then click OK, and then save. And once you click save, you should find that your alt text go over, your title goes over. It shouldn't drop anything if you do it that way. I know it's almost like the long-winded way of doing it. I'm sure other people think, oh, I just want to click one button, but no, for me, save as, up here, PDF, options, click options again, check these are here. Okay, now I'm happy to save, and I don't have issues if I do it that way.
Brilliant.
Just to add on to that.
Oh, yep.
Sorry.
Go for it, James.
If you just close that window quickly.
Yeah.
You can also do it the export way for people asking on
Okay.
the export button.
Yep.
They both, as long as you select the second option, create PDF. Again,
one.
yeah, and avoid anything that says Adobe. And then when you click on that, it will open up in your File Explorer. So either way is the same. People prefer this way, the export way, because it does already give you, if you click on that button, Jane.
Yeah. What, this one here or this one here?
Yeah,
This
that one.
That one.
No, great. Yeah.
Square.
Yeah.
It will already, on your drop down menu, the save as type menu, it will already default to PDF. So that's why people prefer that. And you still have the options to go to the options menu.
Yeah, still just to check that. Okay, there's two different ways of the same thing then, isn't it?
Yeah, but that is the only two ways. And also just add on, sorry, if you go back on options.
Sorry, where am I? Save as. No, what did you want me to do? Where am I here?
Go on options.
Options export. Yeah.
Either one, yeah.
This one, I'm learning. Great. Okay. Options.
And then go on options. You also need to select the fourth to bottom one, the PDF/A compliant. That basically keeps your document in the right, in the right state throughout the export phase, so nothing goes weird basically. And that's normally used for stuff like tabbing and bits like that. Obviously that wouldn't work though if you need to encrypt your document with a password, so there's good and bad things to it, obviously.
Sometimes if that's ticked, it sometimes fails, but only if you've probably got a document you might have used time and time again from an old version of Word, and sometimes it will just throw an error and then you can't have that ticked. It's just because I think you've got like really dodgy coding in your Word or in that document from sort of the past. So if you keep reusing the same document over and over, it kind of sometimes degrades, picks up old sort of dirty code from old versions of Word. So the cleaner you can start, you probably won't suffer with that. But I tend to leave it off because I add it afterwards after I've done my double checking. So that's probably why I don't have that ticked myself.
Yeah, it's not like a requirement. It's just something that we've noticed that it actually does help.